Good morning, everybody. I guess it's kind of more around lunchtime on the East Coast, but welcome to our third webinar of Asset Management Awareness Month. My name is Danielle Lyons, and I have been working on the planning associated with this. So as you guys should know, since you registered for this, today's presentation is Property 101. With that being said, just a couple of kind of pointers. If you guys take a look on your GoToMeeting screen, you guys should have a handout section. On the handout section, there is a PDF file, which you guys are more than welcome to download and keep for your records, or print out and take notes on during the presentation. Second to that, we do record all of these presentations and they will be posted later for your review. So with that being said, if you take a look, we have co-presenters. We initially had Yvonne Batcher, who was going to be presenting, but unfortunately she had another commitment. So we have replaced her with Mr. Skip Adolph, who is also one of my favorite presenters. So I usually get a good laugh out of him. And then he will be co-presenting with Scott Ray. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to those two who are going to go ahead and start.
Well, thank you, Danielle, and on behalf of Skip, welcome to all of you out there. My name is Scott Ray. I'll be co-presenting today, and we have quite a few slides here to talk about and some very interesting topics. So if you do have any questions, we certainly welcome them, but we'll not be taking any questions until after. So you can either go ahead and stick it into the chat box, or write it down at wherever you're currently listening from, and then we can take those at the end. So welcome to the third installment, the third webinar of Property Management Awareness Month, and Property 101. For those of you who may be interested, there is a fourth installment of the series happening next week. It's a panel on inventory. I actually am also going to be running that panel, not necessarily answering questions, but just running it. So if you haven't already registered, registration is now up online, so certainly consider that. So with that, let's get started. So Property 101. So as we transition into our first slide of the day, some of you are probably already identifying various areas or components of what you do in your job. It's interesting because as long as I've been involved with property, it's always been a very key component of the organization I work for, a very important one, but it wasn't always that way. And so, as Skip can probably attest to, for many years it was really sort of building and becoming more prominent. And now it's certainly at a very visible level. But property management is a core business system, and it involves a lot of different components to that. And some of us on this call may have a few of these different components fall under us. And while we certainly could have the same, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have the same duties or responsibilities. So it's important to know where you fit with your organization. And as we look at some of these bullets here, whether it's asset management, inventory control, maybe some logistics or risk, or others that aren't even on here, I think the most important thing we can take as we begin our journey is the fact that at the core of all of these different components is the fact that you need to have very effective communication to be successful. And that is key to the communication is a key to an effective property system. So as we transition into the property management system, it's, as I mentioned on the previously, it has risen to a very prominent level, and it is part of a core business process, as we list down here. When you look at the core business processes, you have capital, you have infrastructure, you have resources, and you have property. So in all of our different areas, regardless of whether you are in the federal government, whether you are a contractor, whether you are in maybe a nonprofit university setting, property plays a key role, and the system that's set up for that certainly is key. Skip, did you have anything you want to add to that?
I think I'm good, Scott. You can continue on.
Alrighty.
Business environments. They can be simple or they can be complex. They run a wide spectrum of possibilities. But consider this. There are basically 5 categories of business environments. They can be government, commercial, higher learning, healthcare, and nonprofits. Under the government agencies, there can be not only federal, but state and local requirements. And then at the high end of that spectrum, international business environments and operations. Profit business can be corporate, can be small or large, domestic or international, and under the education and research or nonprofits, public or private, schools, district, colleges, universities, hospitals, laboratories, and shared facilities. But consider this, in any one of those categories, in any one of those environments, there must be 4 components in order for that environment and that business to operate. First, you must have finance. You got to have money. You got to have capital. Absolutely. Next, you have to have resources, human resources, people, staff. Follow that with operations. Something has to be operating, a business process, a product, a core business product or operation. And lastly, and most importantly, as Scott mentioned earlier, property. Must have property for that business environment to operate. Don't take my word for it. Take a weekend, sneak in there on a Saturday or Sunday and remove a couple of monitors from people's desktops. See how much work they get done on Monday morning. Finance, human resources, operations, and property. Let's go on to asset performance. From a hardware perspective, all right, think about optimizing the assets, whatever they may be in your operating environment, in your world, whatever they may be, maximizing the availability of them. Reduce unplanned downtime. That's a component of maintenance. Control, protect, and preserve and maintain. Minimize costs. Property management plays a key role in minimizing costs regarding duplication. Why buy 2 when 1 will do? Utilization. It improves decision making based on trend analysis, past activities. Property management should have or does have that information available to them for past operations, past availability and reliability of equipment, and in reducing operational risks. Support regulatory compliance, key to an effective and efficient property management system. And those regulatory compliance elements need to be documented in the form of procedures. In years gone past, they used to be called practices, and I personally don't care for the term practices on procedures. Practices suggest to me that we're still practicing and we haven't got it right yet. All right, procedures state, okay, that there is a process in place, and this is how the process works. And in support of all of that, we maximize return on assets. In your organization, in an operation, in your company, especially on the capital side, this is an investment. Property management has a responsibility to maximize the return on that investment, the ROI. Scott? Human capital, it's a perspective. Let's talk about...
Sorry about that, Skip. I had myself muted. So let's talk about human capital. There's a few bullets on this page that really jumped to my attention, and I'll just kind of read them off and then talk about them over in a little bit. But job task analysis. Process involvement, a big one here, which is interesting because it comes as a sub bullet, at least on this slide. Education and training, and then workplace config and managing a remote, because this is something that not all of us have maybe gone to. Some of us may be on the road all the time. I know in my particular environment, we are currently in the process of going to more of a remote workforce, which over the last year has certainly created a whole nother level of just a whole nother level of management and finding time to meet with people and everything like that. But let me jump to the top again. Job task analysis. I mean, this is very important because it's a way to analyze each job function and what kind of skill aptitude is required for that position. Something that is important if you're going to stick someone in that position. You want to make sure that they're going to be successful, that will not cause problems for your process in the future. Process involvement, essentially understanding the steps, the part and the role of that person in the process. I'm going to skip education because I'm going to go back to that in a second. But workplace configuration I find kind of interesting because we all have different environments, whether we are in a cubicle, whether we are in an office, or whether we are in an open workplace, which as we have probably read maybe, or you have heard, is pretty huge when it comes to the whole Silicon Valley layout. The idea that it's all open so you can collaborate and talk to people right there, but at the same time, everyone can hear exactly what you're doing. So it plays a role in how people approach their job and how comfortable they feel in execution of it. But the big one on here for me, human capital, and this is something that we certainly focus on here at Stanford, is really the education and training. We want to make sure that the individual in their position, I should say, is successful in their job. And the only way they can be successful is if they're taking the right training, they're being supported, and getting their questions answered when they have them. The other day, Skip and I were talking. He brought up a good point, a good saying here, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. How do you know if you're doing it wrong if you've never been trained to do it right? And I think that says so much about the importance of making sure that we are providing the right training and the right level of support to make people successful, and that's going to be a key component to a successful property system.
Valid points all, Scott, especially that one about how do you know that you're doing it wrong if you've never been told or trained how to do it right. Let's talk about accountability. And one step above that, start with stewardship. Stewardship is a person or an organization that is managing another's property. So we are all stewards if you are in the government contracting operation and business, stewards of government property, and more importantly, we have a fiduciary responsibility to not just the government, but the U.S. taxpayer. Accountability. It's key for a successful business operation. Means to be answerable, to be responsible. Companies that hold its employees accountable for the choices they make and the tasks they perform witness very high levels of productivity and efficiency, and in concert with that, supports a property management system that is both what? Effective and efficient. Two separate components that marry one another to make a successful and effective property management system. Keyword, compliance. But to be effective, that accountability must be fostered, not forced. So there need to be clear roles, job descriptions, leadership, and individual ownership. There's a sense of ownership for team results, from upper management all the way down to supervision at whatever level in your world. If there is an effort going on that involves a group of individuals, especially within the property management system and the property management organization, we know who those are, we know who you are, you know who you are. There should be recognition for the success of that project. And then freedom and support to navigate competing priorities. Okay, so back in the day we used to remember, okay, did you prioritize that? I can't. Why not? Because everything I'm doing is a priority. Well, okay. Time management. Time management comes into play in dealing with priorities. It cannot be a punitive environment. There's always room for improvement. If we make a mistake, if we're doing it wrong, if something happens, we do an analysis for root cause. What happened? 99% of root causes on dealing with non-compliance findings in an audit result in what? Additional training. And therein lies the opportunity for improvement. And when I say improvement, when we say improvement, remember the task level individuals, those of you that are sitting at your desk, hitting the keyboard, on the receiving dock, on the shipping dock, on the storage dock, wherever it may be, you are in a position to actually do some of the minor things that make a significant improvement in a particular process or procedure. Now, I'm going to add to that, one of the worst things we can do with procedures is not follow them. That has an obverse. There's a flip side of that coin. Second worst thing we can do with procedures is have a procedure in place that doesn't actually perform with the utmost or best efficiency. At the task level, we may know how to improve that. And then integrity, always integrity. A sense of integrity as individuals and as an organization, as a group, as a team.
So let's talk about structure. And this is a really cool example that we have here on this slide. So if we look at the outermost three, I was never very good at geometry. I'm just kidding. The outermost three sides of this triangle, you have stewardship, risk mitigation, and compliance. And on the inside, you have all of these other components, such as people, logistics, systems, agreements, laws, regulations. So if we go back and we look at the outside of the triangle, those three words are picture it as a net. Those three are enterprise wide, and they need to exist at every level of the organization in some fashion. And the green in the middle, well, that's what makes it all happen. And so if you picture this as sort of a safety net, everything all works together and everything is protecting everything else. And I just thought that this was a really neat example of that, of the whole structure in itself. Skip, did you want to add anything to this slide?
Well, only that, Scott, in compliance, all of those elements inside the triangle all produce some component, some element, some piece of the puzzle that, when it's put together, achieves compliance. And that compliance is based on what? The effectiveness of the property management system and the property management organization, the PMO. Property management is a core business system. No argument, no dispute. Assets have 3 phases to its life cycle: acquisition, utilization, disposition. These are not transactions. These are phases of the asset life cycle, cradle to grave. In the acquisition side, there's planning and acquisition, and again, that planning is about, okay, what are our needs? What are our requirements going forward? And another way of looking at it, a different perspective, when we're talking about acquisition and acquisition planning, ask the question, what do we lose if we don't do this? Tough question to answer. Easier to answer, what do we gain if we do this? Well, that's pretty much, a given conclusion. But if you turn that around and ask the question, what do we lose if we don't? You might get a different answer, different perspective. Stewardship and management, there's that utilization phase, and there's that word stewardship again. That was the emphasis on stewardship. The management of the asset, the ongoing activities. It's the tracking, the awareness, the reporting, reconciliation, adjustments, redeployment, retirement, audits, all of which require policies and procedures. Policies and procedures. Excess through disposition. So in the disposition cycle, when an asset, going back to acquisition, the reason we purchased this, we acquired this, it was furnished to us, that is what? The requirement for the asset or assets. Then we manage the assets through utilization, and having said that, let me offer you, if an asset requires reporting in any form, in any fashion, regulatory or internally, doesn't matter, that asset, regardless of value, requires tracking. And if it requires tracking in order to support the reporting, that's where property management comes in. And once the asset or assets have fulfilled that initial requirement for which they were purchased, fabricated, or furnished, then they are excess to that requirement and then become available for any other requirement it may fulfill. In the absence of screening for other requirements, specifically talking about internal to your business operations, then it is surplus to your requirements, plural. And that screening, that excess, that declaration of excess goes external. And in the absence of any external requirement that this asset may fulfill, it is given disposition instructions or disposal instructions. And that may be a shipment, may be a scrap, may be bid sale, may whatever it may be. Get it off the books. Scott.
So your compliance playbook, what would go into your playbook? And as we look down the list here, there's a lot of acronyms. You have FAR, you have OMB, GSA, state regs, GASB, GAP, FASB. Whoa, that rhymes. That's nice. The EPA, specific terms and conditions from the agreement, organizational policy procedures. So depending in your role with your institution or company, some of these may apply, all of these may apply, one or two may apply. It depends, which is a funny term, which it goes into every single property presentation. It feels like it really kind of depends, but you should know which regs or procedures or condition, you should know which apply to you. Some of you may be subject matter experts on one of these items, one of these regulations or standards listed. Others may others may be subject matter experts on multiple, because what your role is in your particular property job dictates what you're gonna need to know. And as you grow, the list likely grows with you. So this is sort of the puzzle that we have to put together and really work through to allow an organization or your organization to run as smooth as possible. And it's interesting because it's so much, there are times when there's so much interpretation, and just trying to make it all work can be challenging, but it's the puzzle that we have, and it's kind of the fun of what property is.
Business process outcomes on the regulatory side, okay, generally applicable to all environments. Now, again, if you're doing government contracting, there are regulatory requirements that you must meet. Some of these requirements are industry standards and can be found in non-government operations. Generally applicable. The government says contractors shall develop property management plans and systems that reflect their efforts to obtain best value. In the government property clause, FAR 52-245-1, there are 10 outcomes. Well, okay, on the surface, there's 10 outcomes. Actually, if you actually read the clause from the first word to the last word, there's more like 22, 24. Because they're embedded in individual outcomes, such as identification, storage, movement, disposal, management, and audit. They are not specifically outcomes as titled, but they are embedded in existing outcomes. But these outcomes are not overbearing, okay? If you read the clause, as the FAR rewrite was done, it was about, okay, contractors do a better job of managing their property than we, the government, are doing managing ours. Why don't we let contractors manage the government property as in the same manner, in the same way that they manage theirs? Acquisition, for example, very simple. This is the actual verbiage out of the government property clause for outcome number 1, acquisition of property. The contractor shall document that all property was acquired consistent with its engineering, production, planning, and property control operations. Period. That's it. Not overwhelming. And a procedure in place that supports that, dealing with what? Now we've got contractor acquired property and government furnished property. There's an example of a single outcome. Acquisition actually has 2. One for receipt of government property and one for receipt of contractor acquired property. Emphasis. Let's go back one. Acquisition, I want to emphasize, is the foundation, the basis on which the audit trail begins and is built going forward. Audit trail, audit trail, audit trail. Every time there is a transaction or a change of accountability to an asset record during that what? Through acquisition, through utilization, through disposition, there needs to be an answer to the question, why? Why did I change this information? Why did I change the accountability? And there is a supporting reason or supporting document to do that. That is the audit trail. Break the audit trail, you're going to lose the asset. May take you some time to catch up to it and find it, but it's going to get lost in the woods. Guaranteed. Okay, Scott, thank you. Organizational controls. They're influenced from the top. If your property management system, if your property management organization does not have senior management support and investment, it's going to be an ongoing challenge to achieve compliance and many other things about the core business of the operation. These are non-negotiable in most cases. Non-negotiable. The organizational structure. What is the relation of property management organization to all other organizations within the environment or the business operations? So I want to offer here at this point, organizational structure means in a property management organization, how many other organizations outside of property management have a contribution to that effective and efficient property management organization? Think about this by yourselves, but I challenge you to find an organization that does not. Someone once challenged me, well, human resources doesn't make a contribution. Well, you know what? I beg to differ. I'm assigning accountability and stewardship to individuals that need property, government or company, to do their job. But if those individuals are on the verge of what? Separating from the organization and property doesn't know it, and that individual separates and human resources has not notified property management, now you've got what? You've got ghost assets out there floating around assigned to somebody that doesn't even work there anymore. Same applies to any what? New hires. So we have new employees coming in that are going to need, operative phrase, property to perform their job. It would be good and effective and efficient for property management to know that ahead of time so that they know what assets this new hire, this individual is going to need and hopefully have. Communication strategies and methods. All right, so in today's world, we've got text and we've got emails. I dare say the daily phone call is falling to the wayside, and I understand that. You know, you can carry on using email. You can carry on 4, 5, 6 different conversations at the same time. However, those conversations with the use of email can take anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 days, 2 weeks in some cases. Whereas what? A 20-minute phone call could have resolved it all at once. Enforceability. There has to be some need, some recognition, and some understanding that these controls are required. And if these controls are ignored or not followed, there needs to be some recourse. And periodic validation, self-assessment, if you will, to validate the value of the operation and the procedure, and recognition for when there is an operation that is successful, consistently effective, there should be recognition. Absolutely. Key controls. These are the elements of any organization, and the organization controls of how it operates. It's a facet of risk management and risk mitigation. These controls are defined in policies and procedures. As far as procedures are concerned, don't overstate, don't over talk what the procedure is. The procedure should be able to be read and recognized and understood by anyone performing that task. Provide reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance. Material errors will be prevented, and when not prevented, detected in a timely manner. There is that analysis. That analysis. Contractor self-assessments are looking for that type of analysis and the correction performed in a timely manner relative to what? Relative to the size or the complexity of the error. Key controls cover more than just one risk or process. They cover the entire entity at the entity level. And they should be regularly tested to make sure that they are effective, still in operation, still in place, and they still work. Let's talk about funding. Asset funding for acquisition. First step, identify the funding source. Follow the money. Is it sponsor? Is it general funds? Is it capital? Is it a contract? Is it a grant? Any other type of award? This directly affects ownership and, equally important, liability. Liability for the damage or destruction or loss or theft of that asset or those assets. Follow the money. Identify the funding source. Now, relative to government-owned property, I'm going to offer there's only two ways, one of two ways that you can acquire government-owned property. You can purchase it using contract funds. That would make it contractor-acquired property. Or your customer or the government may furnish it to you, which would make it then government-furnished property. That's it. Government-owned property is either contractor acquired or government furnished. Try to find another way, and I'll get on board with it. Define the methods of appropriation and approvals depending on the value or the price or the amount of money that we're talking about. There should be some controls in place for maintaining the level of appropriation and the approvals for it. Understanding the implications of shared funding is also important. Multiple sources of funding going into a common cause project or effort. And up front, at acquisition, ensure data integrity. That's critical to your audit trail. Data integrity.
So let's build upon what Skip just talked about on that last slide, and let's talk about acquisition and methods of acquisition. So there's a ton of different ways, well, not a ton, but a lot of different ways in which we can acquire equipment. And each of these different ways has a different path or possibly department that you're interacting with. So if we look at the list here, we have sponsor, furnished, or loaned. So in that regard, Skip just spoke about government-owned coming in two different ways, whether that's government-furnished property, GFP, or contractor-acquired property. But there's also purchased, a new or used purchase. There's reuse. So potentially, if you have a piece of equipment that's being reused within your organization, a lease or rent item, perhaps like a copier, gifts, transfers, and fabs. So all of these different methods are ways that we can acquire property, and we need to make sure that we're confirming asset ownership and title throughout the asset's life cycle. And each one of these has some unique characteristics and considerations. And a lot of times, funding source may actually determine what kind of method is used to acquire the equipment. So that's some thoughts on methods of acquisitions. So if we were to move on and talk about records. So records, as we state here at the very first bullet, is really the heart of your property system. It is helps identify the official record. It defines required elements. It defines access. So in regards to access, we need to make sure that no access is given to those who should not have access. And that's important to define. Who are you giving access to your property system? Who are the people that are logging in every day or every other day or once a month that are updating and maintaining the records? We need to make sure that those people that we're giving access to have the appropriate training and are supposed to be in the system. It also helps, records also help provide information to help make decisions within your organization at times. Do we need a new piece of equipment? Can we buy a new piece of equipment? What do we already have? And really, the hardest part about the records is that is the management of the integrity of the record throughout its life. And that's tough, having to constantly update it, depending on its location. Maybe location changed. Maybe the status of it changed. Maybe it's out for repair. Maybe it's broken. But maintaining that integrity throughout its life is very important. And self-assessment on here, I just want to touch on as well. I mean, that's the best place to evaluate your record and your system is through self-assessment. Really getting in there, testing it, seeing what's working, seeing what's not working.
You want me to take this, Scott?
Oh, sorry, Skip. I'm sorry. I was sitting here looking at this, and I'm like, is this me? I'm sorry. I kind of dropped this one. So records management, again, continued. So basically, there has to be an official record, official system of record. And this word cloud here kind of plays on that. And it just describes all of the different ways that people keep, that records are kept. And I don't, yeah, Skip, if you have anything else to add on this, I really don't have much else, I think.
Well, I would just offer, tying back to data integrity, records integrity, you know, it's easy enough to create an asset record. It's easy enough, or maybe not easy enough, to correct this single source, this one source of asset management information. Anytime you have more than one source of data regarding asset management, it's a challenge to keep those sources synchronized to one another. There should be one that is specified as, here's the key words, the auditable record. And again, that auditable record, simple enough to create, but the challenge then going forward is it has to be maintained. Those records have to be managed and maintained going forward. Disposition. Again, it's a cycle, not a transaction. But in this graphic, there are a few of the transactions that, generally speaking, may apply to your disposition processes, plural, whatever they may be. But notice, once that department has fulfilled the requirement for which this asset was acquired, it is now available for what? Reutilization. That's that search, that screening for additional requirements. Regarding contracts that go into closure with follow-on contracts, the requirement for the follow-on contract and the property on the losing or closing contract should be analyzed to make an informed decision. We would suggest avoiding a blanket transfer of all assets from the losing contract to the gaining contract. Not without an informed decision as to why we are transferring the asset. Again, answer the question why. More importantly, in the disposition process, there is an element of materiality. So it's not so simple as redeploying, selling, or recycling, whatever that may be. Okay, there needs to be an involvement in some aspect from some portion of or part of the business operations to deal with materiality. In today's world, we've got a variety of those things that fall under the title or fall under the label of materiality: export control, hazmat, application. It's something, the asset itself may be harmless in its presence or in its view, but we need to tie back to, okay, and what was it used for? And if that use during its utilization made this asset, this item, this thing potentially hazardous, potentially, there's another informed decision made by, and I'll use the word health and safety, environmental health and safety. These are the experts that know, based on their job description and their background, their experience, if assets going through disposition have an element of materiality.
So the multifaceted property team. So on the right side of your screen here, you have the business function or process, and on the left side you have the business function and process. On the right side you have your organization. And I'll note before I get too much into the slide is that these do not line up. They're random lists on either side, but the common denominator here is guess who's in the middle holding things together. And it may not be the same for you, but in my experience, certainly is the PMO certainly is right in the middle. The property management office is right in the middle, holding everything together. So it's important that every team member within your property office should be trained in perhaps two or more different skill sets and have that available to them. And the reason I say that is because if anything happens, they can just jump right in and the process is not interrupted until the other person returns. We should also, as property managers, have an idea of what each department does and be able to connect the dots for whatever that means in your particular environment. And no two environments are the same. You can be in the same industry and have a completely different organization set up and everything like that. So we just need to make sure we are aware of our surroundings outside of the property management office, where we fit in our organization, and who are the key people that we need to work with to make the whole process successful. And I'm just going to jump back real quick to the asset performance management slide and the fifth bullet on the left side, and that's communication. It's critical, and Skip was talking about a few slides ago the fact that for the most part now we're less on the phone, more over email, more over an application such as Slack, where we can collaborate basically by typing in to an application that's pretty much like a instant message sort of thing. But it's important that we utilize all forms of communication in order to be successful in our particular environments.
This is your alphabet soup.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. This is interesting, but and Skip just said it. I mean, this is the alphabet soup of property, and And there's just so many different terms that go into the property world, the property field, and those get even larger if you start to include the various acronyms within your individual organizations. It's funny, we joke around in our office all the time that that we could literally write a book of acronyms for all of the different things here at Stanford, and I'm sure everyone, wherever you are, can do the same for your organization. But if we were to look at some of the words on here, we have some asset, of course, that's a very, very common word, use it all the time. COSO, newer for us over the last 2-3 years. Very important document associated with some of our audits. Ownership title, security, cloud computing, becoming more and more prevalent, especially for where I am right now. And Skip, I'm going to let you talk about the one that is listed under language of property if you'd like. If not, we can move on. But FUBAR.
Well, it goes back a lot of years, and I thought it was, bringing ancient property management into the future, into today's world. And FUBAR means fouled up beyond all recognition, which was usually the label that we put on a major audit finding. Now they call it a car level 3. Well, okay, back in the day, that's what we called
it. Right on. All right.
Valuable skills and knowledge. You should all have access to resources. Training, obviously. MPMA, such as what we're doing right now today. Your peers, your colleagues, etc. Technical understanding. Well, okay, you should have some level or technical understanding in today's world of what? Yeah, everything's becoming technical, computerized. There needs to be some technical understanding and technical knowledge involved in your day-to-day activity. Effective communication. You should be an effective communicator. And I will add to that, never, ever assume. An effective communicator does not send an email and then on the day an action item in that email was expected to take place and it didn't. They made an assumption that the individual on the receiving end of the email read it. Without that reply or response, there's no validation. I like the conversation. Did you get my email? Yes, I did. What do you think? About what? About the email. What about it? Well, I made a mention about how we're going to do this. I said, you know what? I didn't read the email. You said you read it. No. You asked me if I got it. I didn't read it. I got it. Never assume. Ability to negotiate. There's somewhere in the middle of a dispute or a negotiation that needs to be recognized, commonly referred to as what? Agree to disagree. Analytical capability. Analyze. Look at a situation or condition from several perspectives, not just one. Don't be myopic. Don't be objective. Be subjective and make an informed decision. And do so with tact and diplomacy. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about how do we move forward. And be a motivated and self-starter and participate, contribute, and lead. And lead by example. Support the property management organization, support your property management coworkers and peers, and at the same time step outside of property management, the property management organization, and support and lead those other organizations where they have that what? Direct contribution to the property management system.
And with that, that brings us to the end of our slides today. I'd like to go ahead now and open it up to any questions that anyone may have about what we just talked about. And you can go ahead and type it into the chat box here, and then hopefully we can pick it up.
Scott, there is one question sitting in there right now. It says slide 20, RA and A. So I think they're probably asking for a definition of what that means.
Okay, which RA and A? Skip, do you have any? Would you be able to answer
the
that?
language property, RA and A. You know what? I thought that was a Stanford unique acronym or abbreviation. So I'm at a loss. RA and A.
We'll have to ask Yvonne about that. And
well, at least there's proof that someone's really listening. I'm kidding.
Right.
It looks like somebody else wrote in roles, responsibility, and authority.
Oh, great!
There
Thank you. Thank you out there in Webland.
Peggy asked, when will the slides be available on the MTMA website? I can get them posted. I'll submit to have them posted. I think usually we wait till the end of Asset Management Awareness Month to post links to all of the videos and everything like that. There might be some kind of sneak links that show up on Facebook, but I would say just look the first week of April. Tina said, thank you. Excellent session.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody out there. Thanks for working with us. As you can tell, we're very far apart, but we're also presenting on the same far apart in terms of location, but we're still presenting on the same topic. So that's really neat. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all, and sincerely hope the content.
Though I'm just reading. Hey guys, we still got more questions. So that was just somebody's comment. So moving on, next question: K9 assets as GFE. How do we dispose of those?
Oh, Skip, that's your world.
Okay. What was the question? I'm not seeing it. What is it?
How to dispose of K9 assets. So K9 assets as GFE, how do we dispose of?
K9 assets.
Do you want me to try to answer this, Skip?
Well, okay. So I'm not going to address the fact that it's a K9 asset. They're canines in use for whatever reason, okay? But if it's a contractual activity where these canines are being utilized, then that disposition, and there are many things that probably come into play in submitting for disposition instructions, would be at the customer's level, the government's level.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of follow up to that, I've been involved with police departments that have had to get rid of them. So it's regulatory compliance as far as getting rid of them, obviously. And then there is, websites that can assist with disposal that are kind of approved by the government if you don't have a contract with them. So I know Public Surplus is one of them. And there's kind of some other websites that deal with that type of thing frequently. Okay, so another thing, Skip mentioned about HR informing the property department when someone leaves. We have close to 5,000 employees. How does this happen?
Well, okay, so now here comes the part in communication where you need to mitigate and negotiate, okay? So, I mean, I'm going to speak from experience, but keep it in a very simple scenario. HR gets notified, has some advance notice, whatever advance means. They get some advance notice of a separation, a termination, a hire, interns, temporary employees, whatever the case may be. I mean, it doesn't happen. They don't walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning and find out by 9 o'clock that they've got a new hire coming in. This happens in advance. Okay, well, then, and of course, nothing's 100%. So, there may be some cases where HR does not have advance notice. Okay, well, to negotiate, then the communication is HR, when you learn of these separations, terminations, or new hires, or vendors, or whatever the case may be, property management needs to know that. And in today's world of communication, i.e. what? Email, it would be a very simple email for someone in human resources to send the property manager or some designee in the property management office, effective such and such a date, we have a new hire coming in, this is their name. Effective such and such a date, we have a separation, this is their name, this is their department. So the property is also aware of the upcoming event, not surprised by it or finding out too late.
So I think we can maybe take one more question, Danielle, or so. I mean, I don't know how many more we have.
Sure. There was just a comment from University of Florida that they recycle the working dogs to pets. This looks like it's a pretty big one. What are the strategies for managing a more remote property management? My property is not centralized and I struggle with managing it over how large our site is.
Okay, so you have a decentralized operation. There are remote test sites, the remote operations that are separated from the main facility where you are located. Suggestion, there is no easy answer here. The answer lies within your corporate environment and your corporate support of how you want to manage this property. But the suggestion might be that at these remote sites, outside of the central or the main operation, there be a designated individual, probably not going to be happy about it, but if we train them correctly and we, involve them in, they are the designated representative for at a minimum communicating property management or at best performing specific property management tasks that get communicated back to the main property management office.
All right. Well, then it's 11:02, and I apologize. It looks like most of the other stuff is just comments, and we don't have very many other questions. So it's 11:02. I just want to thank you guys for attending the webinar. Scott did mention earlier that there is another webinar next week, which is our final webinar for Asset Management Awareness Month. It is going to be a physical inventory panel that is moderated by Scott. It should be pretty fun. So the registration link should now be up at the website, which would be www.npma.org/AMAM, where you can find all of the latest, greatest information regarding Asset Management Awareness Month. So thank you, Scott and Skip. That was fantastic. Scott, we will be hearing from you next week during the webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.